NBA All-Star game, which we had the NBA All-Star game itself, which ended up being, I think it was 212 to 186, highest scoring game of all time in the NBA world.
Yeah, the East dropped 211 points. Damian Lillard, if you talk about anyone who won the weekend, Damian Lillard goes back-to-back three-point champions, ends up beating Trae Young on the last shot there, and he was the only one who outdid the player that Steph Curry played in the three-point contest. So Damian Lillard wins back-to-back three-point contests. Steph would have beat him with his score, and then he ends up going out there and winning the East MVP for the All-Star game overall. So congratulations to Damian Lillard. Always been one of my favorite players, so nice to see him go out there and ball out.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they're critics of the NBA All-Star game has been how it's incompetitive, how there's not really that motivation that players might have. People don't want to get hurt. It's middle of the season. And that's kind of what the dialogue came from after the All-Star game. Now, you and I are old enough to remember those old All-Star games with Shaq versus Kobe, with, the East versus West and everything like that. Since they've moved away from the East versus West and it's moved more towards Team LeBron, Team Giannis, Team KD, Team Steph, everybody like that. Feels like the All-Star game has been the same because there's not that animosity. And then also, why are we playing the All-Star game? The only sport that gets it right, and this is almost never uttered out of my mouth because everything the sport does is always wrong. The MLB. The MLB has it right. The MLB.
Yeah.
You play the All-Star game middle of the season, just like the NBA. All-Star voting, similar, everything similar. But the winner gets home field advantage in the World Series. It's been that way. And guess what? MLB All-Star game, arguably the best. Home run derby, great. Everything else, very similar to the All-Star game for the NBA. NBA, it's simple. East versus West, and it matters. That's how you make it matter. None of this, bullshit that they have now. But I thought it was entertaining. All-Star games, they're not supposed to be this massively competitive game. It's not the finals or anything like that. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it, and I feel like it's a lot more enjoyable than the Pro Bowl, with all the grief that people give, because the Pro Bowl ended up being so bad that they're like, all right, we're not even going to play football anymore if you guys aren't going to tackle. Let's just do flag football. We'll take the helmets off. Everyone, will be a star, and it's rare that you get to see everyone's face when they're playing football, but I do agree for the NBA All-Star game, it used to be competitive because you had that Mamba mentality. You had the East versus the West. There was that legitimate animosity of the early 2000s where players just want to go out there and win no matter what. And then it's kind of more of the AAU, everyone's friends, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think the NBA is definitely having a little bit of a comeback here as far as talent and competitiveness. But I feel like just adding that, okay, we could be a 4 or a 5 seed and end up getting home court advantage. You don't think LeBron, who's probably going to perpetually be either in the play-in tournament or at least a 6 or a 5th seed with the Lakers where they are, where he pretty much takes off the first half of the season and they don't get it going till after the All-Star break. So for someone like him, he'd be like, all right, we got one game and then we're going to go out here, compete, and then we're going to get home court advantage, which is going to matter for a lot of these teams because unless it was LeBron James at the peak of his powers versus the Golden State Warriors, it's like the Warriors had a really good home court advantage, and just thinking, well, we could be in the East and then take away that home court in Oracle, or we could not have to hear for 4 games about them talk about the air in Denver and only hear them talk about it for 3 games in Denver. Because anytime it's in Denver, they're like, oh, did you guys know that the air is different in Denver because the city is so high? Like, yes.
Yes, we're very aware.
We know.
Even in the arena, we are aware. You let us know every single time. You let us know when there's a Broncos game, when there is a Rockies game, and especially when there's a Nuggets game. So I think that's a fine solution, and especially for someone like LeBron, who he's got maybe a year or 2 left for that one, that illustrious title. He has, obviously he wins 5. He's not quite at Jordan's level, but he's made a million finals. So
yeah,
that's something that could add some competitiveness. Or maybe you're the Celtics and your team that should basically be the favorites for the championship in the East. The only team that feels legitimate in the East, the Bucks have been reeling since Doc Rivers took over. Every other team, they haven't quite looked the part. The Heat are that team you can always bank on, but for the most part, maybe the Knicks you can throw out there too. But give us, as far as solutions for the All-Star game, make it competitive again.
Yeah, make it competitive again, and that would work for the All-Star game.